Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough, and this is another vlog video. I seriously considered doing this as a commentary, but I tried recording live commentary for it, and honestly, I was just engulfed in what I was watching, so I didn't really have a whole lot of things to say while I was watching. It wasn't one of those type of things like Little Shop, for example, where it's like, it's just so bad, you're like, wait, what? What? While you're watching it. It was good. It was very good. You can read the title. It's Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. And, well, this is probably going to be a fairly short one because I didn't have a whole lot to say going off of this first episode. This is just kind of some quick thoughts on the first episode, which is basically an extended TV movie. It's about an hour and a half long. And, well, this was their attempt at trying to make a new, kind of hip, urban, sexy Superman-type show. This was actually a couple years before the animated series, and it was a couple years before Smallville, and I'm actually surprised Smallville lasted longer than this. I mean, obviously there was a huge following for it. I mean, that went from like 2001 to 2011. This was, I believe, 93 to 97, so it went for only 4 seasons, which is pretty good. One thing that surprised me was with the quality of special effects, and you know, it's a TV show in the 90s. I get that, but some of the special effects, like all the green screen effects of Superman flying, I gotta say, ooh, those are definitely some of the weaker effects. When they first show off his powers, those effects actually weren't that bad. Like there's a part where like a light bulb overhead is going out, so then he starts floating above the bed and up to the ceiling, and he screws the light bulb in to get it working properly. And there's a part where he walks on the walls, and like there's some trick photography going on there, but it's like I thought those effects were actually pretty good. Then when you get to all the green screen stuff, like there's a part where they jump away from an explosion, and it's like, oh, it just doesn't look very good. It's like even for 93, it's just like, I get it's for TV and all, but like some of those effects didn't hold up. The practical effects look better than the crappy green screen effects. I was actually kind of surprised to find out this was ABC, mostly because ABC is owned by Disney, and obviously Warner Brothers are the ones that own the rights to all the DC characters, Superman included. So that was a little bit surprising. I was surprised it was ABC because some of the special effects looked like they were Sci-Fi Channel quality, and I think the main reason I kept thinking that was because you got Tracy Scoggins in here, and she was in a bunch of sci-fi movies, or movies that were on Sci-Fi Channel. She was in a lot of like Full Moon Pictures stuff. Tracy Scoggins is in this, and I mean the two main leads in here, you have Terry Hatcher as Lois Lane, and you got Dean Cain as Superman. And, well, Terry Hatcher, she's had a decent career, I guess. A lot of Seinfeld fans out there obviously remember her as, they're real and they're spectacular. Sidra was her character's name on that show. And she shows up in one episode in season 4 and then the finale. And Dean Cain, I think a lot of bad movie fans remember him for the Dog That Saved Christmas series. He was one of those guys where it's like he had an okay career. It was a lot of TV stuff, but then the older he got, and nowadays he mostly just appears in a lot of like more conservative, like religious stuff. He kind of went down like the Kevin Sorbo route. And if he's not doing that for an easy paycheck, he'll be in those stupid Hallmark ABC family movies like Dog That Saved Christmas. But anyway, yeah, so this was sort of his big break. This was his, big showcase. He got to be Superman. And this was after the Christopher Reeve era. Like I said, it was before the animated series, which is the one I mostly grew up with, as well as Justice League, which they aired a lot on Cartoon Network in the early 2000s. There was Smallville, which came a little bit later. In terms of like live-action Superman movies, obviously it would be a long gap until 2006 with Superman Returns. But yeah, I mean, as for this, it's basically an origin story without going into 100% detail. You don't see Krypton blowing up. You don't see him being sent to Earth in his pod and then landing, and they kind of jump more to the basics of he was raised by Ma and Pa Kent, and then he goes to the big city. That was one thing I wanted to mostly focus on because as a newcomer, I haven't seen this show before. This is the first time me watching the first episode of this. I gotta say, it was kind of surprising to see a new take on Superman where it's trying to be funny, but it's not an out-and-out comedy. You know, thankfully this isn't like Superman 3, where it's just a bunch of bad comedy. And it kind of was making me feel like this was sort of the 90s version of that new animated Adult Swim Superman show, where, you know, you have a story going on, but they also try to throw in some comedy. I think that leans a lot more into the comedy. But this one, I was actually kind of surprised at how it was trying to be sort of 90s and modern and contemporary, you know, sort of an update from the 80s ones. Mostly because, I mean, well, there's a lot of, like, innuendo going on throughout this whole show. The stuff with Lois Lane, like, she lives in an apartment with her sister, and her sister's telling her, you know, you gotta get out there, you gotta meet more men. And I really wasn't expecting that much of that. And again, you know, in the 90s there was more of a push to try and make, you know, strong female characters. I was honestly surprised how much of that there was in the first half of this thing. I mean, a lot of Lois's dialogue is, you know, talking about how she doesn't care about dates, she cares more about her job, and she cares more about reporting, which is really funny because later on there's plenty of examples of her just hiring guys to go do work for her, like, oh yeah, go into this really dangerous area for me, because I'm Lois Lane, damn it, and I can afford it. And there's just a lot of that. I mean, even when Clark first gets hired to work at the Daily Planet, he shows up and she just sees him as the doofy farm boy. You know, oh, you're from Kansas, whateverville, you know, that kind of thing. And she's just going off on him and just, you know, says all this stuff about, like, you know, don't get in my way, farm boy. I can do this all on my own. I don't need you. You know, I'm not playing second banana to you. And he just kind of smiles and laughs it off. I actually did like a lot of the build-up to Lois and Clark's relationship. You know, at first they don't get along, but they're paired up and they have to work together, and they eventually form a mutual respect for each other. Clark obviously has feelings for her, and near the end of this thing, like near the last 25 minutes or so, is when you actually get to him becoming Superman, and you have a funny montage of him at the farmhouse with Ma and Pa Kent, and Ma Kent is trying to work on a super suit for him, and, you know, there's a montage of a bunch of different crazy looking outfits that don't look good, but then ultimately they land on the Superman suit. And they, again, with the comedy that's in this, they make a joke about, oh yeah, you know, you're practically running around in red underwear and your bulge is showing. It's like, wow, okay. Like, I know the audience has made that joke for years, but seeing them actually do it in the show was probably revolutionary in the 90s. Nowadays, they have a bunch of stuff like that. I also couldn't help but make Man of Steel comparisons because, okay, one of the first things that Clark does, because he wants to help people, but he doesn't want to reveal his identity. So there's a scene where Lois and Clark are walking to work, and there's a guy who fell down a manhole. So Clark jumps in to save him, and he does it super fast, of course, because the guy who's a little bit out of it, he's like, it's that guy saved me. And Lois is like, oh, you just missed this guy getting saved, Clark. Why are you all dirty all of a sudden? He goes, you know, and doesn't even answer her. I thought that was funny. It's like, didn't even come up with an excuse. Okay. But, yeah, the guy, he's saved, and it ends up making the news, and he's talking with Ma and Pa Kent over the phone in his crappy apartment. He's talking to Ma and Pa Kent, and Pa Kent is like, oh, yeah, you gotta be careful with that, Clark. You know, you're gonna end up getting caught, and they're gonna dissect you in a laboratory somewhere like a frog. And he's, Ma Kent says, like, well, what was he supposed to do? Just let that poor man get injured or hurt or even killed? And there's kind of a pause. And I was like, do not pull a Man of Steel and have him go, maybe. I was like, do not go there. Thankfully, they didn't go there. But there's also a part later, because you have a character in here named Kat, who works at the Daily Planet, and she's the sexy young thing who's sort of the rival to Lois Lane, and she wants to get to Clark Kent, and Clark likes her at first, but of course his heart is obviously to Lois. But, you know, there's a little flirtation going on back and forth, and she's supposed to be super sexy. And she's the character played by Tracy Scoggins. Clark, as Superman, flies Lois to the Daily Planet, and, you know, everybody is amazed. Oh, wow, a man that can fly and has superpowers. And then he flies off, and Tracy Scoggins' character just goes like, do you know what the S on his chest stands for? And, you know, that's when Lois says, like, yeah, Superman. And it just made me flash back to Man of Steel, where they say, oh, nice S. get it because it sounds like nice ass. So I don't know what it was. It's just the way that that scene played out. I was like, oh god, it's Man of Steel before Man of Steel. You know, oh, what nice S. What's the S on his chest stand for? But going back to Clark's apartment, there's a part where Lois shows up, and he's getting ready for work, and of course he gets ready super fast. And well, there's a scene where she's going through his fridge and his cupboards, and he just has a bunch of snacks. And I'm just like, you know, she even says, like, she's like, so you have the diet of an 8-year-old and yet you look like that, Mr. Hardbody? She's like, what's your secret? I did like the scenes with the chief, you know, and they actually pay off something with him later. There's a part when Clark is first applying for a job, and the guy doesn't like his work. He thinks it's very, like, rinky-dink and just kind of lame. But he's like, you know what, you're a good kid, but I don't think I can hire you now. And then eventually later on he ends up hiring him, and much to Lois's dissatisfaction. And then, you know, then they start having chemistry because they're working a late night shift together, and she says that she can go for some authentic Chinese food, and he flies all the way to China and brings back authentic Chinese food, and she's like, this is delicious. Even the fortune cookies, they're written in Chinese, and he shows off how he's bilingual and he's able to read the Chinese, and that amazes her. But I liked the chief. There's a scene like when he's first talking and interviewing Clark, and he says something about, like, you know, oh, you know, I have stress, and, you know, I have heart problems and stuff, and Clark suggests these pava leaves. He says, like, yeah, there's a civilization, and they, you know, to help reduce stress and heart rate issues, they eat pava leaves, and they consume them, they smell them, they eat them. And then later on in the pilot, you see the chief is actually, like, smelling and eating pava leaves. And again, because it was reminding me of a bunch of other things, like the scenes where he's going on about, like, you know, oh, I have stress around here. I was waiting for him to say that he has gas, like Cameron Mitchell's character in Hollywood Cop, where he's the police chief, and he says that it's a Tums festival. But yeah, I mean, he did a pretty good job. I guess we gotta talk about the guy that plays Lex Luthor. He did pretty good. I mean, this is a given. Way better than the DCU version with Jesse Eisenberg. Oh my god, Jesse Eisenberg was not a good Lex Luthor. I mean, I know he can be a bit of an egomaniac. Maybe that's why they got him. It's like, hey, you played Mark Zuckerberg. Maybe you can play another, you know, twisted corporate billionaire guy. But, oh god, yeah, him as Lex Luthor was not good. I don't know. Again, I'm biased here. I grew up with the animated series. I'll always prefer that Lex Luthor. I think that's my definitive Lex Luthor, as well as the Lex Luthor from the live-action movies. You know, the late, great Gene Hackman. But this guy, he did pretty good. You know, he was good at playing slimy. I'll give him that. He was definitely good at playing, like, manipulative and trying to be charming, but you can also tell that he's just an absolute slime ball. Like, they establish he barely comes out and interacts with people. He's so evasive. You barely know that he's there. But he still ends up as, you know, Times Man of the Year every single year, and has multiple corporations, and as Jimmy Olsen says, he has his finger in multiple pies. But then you finally see him, and well, Lois wants to get an interview with him, and he agrees, and her sister sees it as an opportunity for her to get out and see more men and go on dates, because that's what they talk about in their scenes. But you know, he's the kind of guy where, like, she'll say something and he'll cut her off and try to divert the conversation to something else. You know, she'll be asking about his businesses, and before she can finish her sentence, he goes, "You look beautiful. What time should I pick you up?" Or, "Oh, you know, you look beautiful. You're a smart young woman. Oh, what's your favorite type of food? Let's go to dinner." And yeah, he did a pretty good job of that. But he also did a good job at playing the, like, manipulative, cunning part of Lex Luthor, where, yeah, he is charming, but it's a type of charming where it comes off really disgusting and slimy. But there's also something hidden behind the surface, and I like the little interaction they have with Lex and Superman at the very end, when, you know, when Clark finally becomes Superman and he saves the day. Have it that he basically, it's not really a threat, but it's like a, you know, you better watch yourself, Luthor. You know, I'm here now, and I'm here to protect this city, and if you do anything, I'll be there. And I like that little interaction. That was nice. Because Lex even is this, like, has this cocky, responsive, like, as soon as he shows up, he's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? Take me to jail?" Guy comes to them saying that this space station is about to be, you know, tampered with because Lex Luthor wants to run them out of business essentially and set up shop with his own space station, which the entire time I just kept thinking, I'm like, oh god, watching this in 2025 with all the talk of space stations and robberies, I'm like, oh god, it's SpaceX versus Amazon rockets. Oh god, no. Going back to what I was originally saying, yeah, I like that guy's portrayal of Lex Luthor fine. Again, my personal favorite will still probably be the animated series and, you know, Gene Hackman, but you know, this guy, not a bad Lex Luthor. He did a pretty good job. You know, he made it his own thing, which I appreciated. Yeah, overall, I liked this pilot. I liked what I've seen. I need to watch more of the show, but as for the first episode of this, I thought it was good. I mean, compared to other superhero things we've talked about, notably the terrible 2011 Wonder Woman pilot, and if they end up releasing the full whatever raw footage they might have of the CW Powerpuff pilot, I will definitely try to do a video on that. But as of now, I mean, this is definitely leagues above the 2011 Wonder Woman pilot. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, there's a reason that this did well and this went on to have 4 seasons, and Wonder Woman was so bad, the only way that you can view it is, you know, through bootleg DVDs at conventions. So yeah, I mean, you say what you want about this. It's not perfect. I can see people not getting into it, but, you know, I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think there was really anything that was objectionable. Some of the effects are laughable, but that's just because it's an old 90s show, and, you know, this is like 30-plus years later. But, you know, for what it is, it was good. It was entertaining. It was a nice little change of pace, a nice little different take on Superman. And, you know, I thought that the performances were good. I thought everyone did their parts well. Maybe it runs a little long, and maybe some of it is a little silly. I mean, I never really thought it got too silly. I was more just kind of surprised that, like, oh yeah, they're trying to do modern, sexy take on Superman. You know, that was a little bit jarring, but yeah, I was able to look past it. It really wasn't that bad. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about Lois and Clark. So tune in next time. I'm going to be doing a comic book review. It was yet another request. This one was requested, and next week's MediaWiz video will be a request. And yeah, like I said, I was going to do this as a commentary, but same thing happened when I tried recording a commentary for this MODOK series that someone requested. Maybe I'll do a vlog video on that sometime in the future, but I tried watching it, I tried doing a commentary for it, and I really didn't have much to say, so ultimately just decided I'll talk about it for a vlog video. So yeah, you get 2 MediaWiz videos since I didn't do a MediaWiz video last week. So yeah, this week you get Action 52 and you get Lois and Clark. And needless to say, Lois and Clark was so much better. But yeah, that does it for this video. Until next time, I'm the MediaWiz, because one art form wasn't enough.